Hi everybody, thanks for tuning in to Peeling Back the Label. Today we have a very special guest, Heather B. Moore, and today we're going to talk about her book, The Lady Flyer. It's fantastic. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend you do. And we're going to talk a little bit also about the women in history and how she got started with the 31, the 31 reads of the women in history. So let me just get her hooked up and we'll get going.
It worked.
That's weird. I can't see you, but you could see
Let
me.
me see if I need to push anything here.
This has happened before where I couldn't see the person, which was a shame because it's nice when you can actually see the person's face and their expressions and
Yeah,
everything.
let me
But
just see
meanwhile,
if like there's something
but
I need to do.
it did, when I transferred it, downloaded it to Amazon, it was fine. I mean, Instagram, it was fine, but this is weird. I wonder why it's doing that. I'm just trying to see too
Yeah,
if
let me
I'm
find
doing some.
something.
Go. Oh, yeah. Let's see. It's showing both of us are here. Huh. I don't know. It's up to you. We can either go out and go in again, or can you see me? Hello? Heather? Did I just lose you? It has to be this internet.
Can you see me okay?
No, I can't see you at all. It's so weird.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you and
All
hear
right, let's
you.
we'll run
Okay,
with it.
that's fine.
It's fine. I wish I could see your beautiful face. Unfortunately, I can't. But thank you so much for coming on to Peeling Back the Label. Your book is fantastic. Can you tell the viewers a little bit about the book and why you decided to write this book? I have it right here. I listened to it on the on
Okay.
Audible, and I loved it. I loved it, loved it, loved it. I keep on thinking about the book. So maybe, can you show people the book?
Yeah.
See this? I
Yeah.
feel so bad because I don't know. I can't see what you're doing or not doing.
Yeah, I'm showing the book now. It's called Lady Flyer, and it's historical fiction on Nancy Love, who was the director of the Women Air Force Service Pilots during World War II. So she and Jackie Cochran ran a program where the women were formed into squadrons, these pilots, and they were able to ferry the bombers that were being manufactured to the air bases so the men could then train to fly for combat, and it saved the military millions and millions of hours. Actually, it was like over 60 million hours that these women spent over a 2-year period working and serving their country.
Now, so these were real people, correct?
Yeah, so Nancy Love is a real person, and basically everyone in the book is a real person in history. There's a couple people I didn't know their names, so I did give them fictional names, but there's actually no fictional characters.
Wow. I just can't believe like how women had it hard and everything, but they were like, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to fly, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and then all of a sudden, nope, canceled. And
Right?
then they would still fight and do it again. Okay, we're going to go this time, we're doing it. Yep, nope,
Yeah.
canceled. I'm like, these poor ladies, they try, all they want to do is fly.
Yeah, there's a lot of red tape going on. In fact, when they first opened this program, well, Nancy Love and Jackie Cochran, they had been pushing for this type of program early in the war, but it wasn't until the United States actually entered the war that they got the green light to start the first squadron. At that time, American pilots had gone over to England where the women were allowed to help ferry planes. And so they wanted just to do anything. And we know that other military also went over and were helping in the war effort before the U.S. officially entered. And it was interesting because they they first gave permission for 25 women to join the first squadron, and it was at Wilmington in Delaware. And they had all kinds of restrictions. And one of them is that you couldn't be over 35 because they were worried about women going into menopause. And as they're flying, they make bad decisions because apparently you go crazy when you're in menopause. So they kind of had to fight
Yeah,
against
I
just
remember
things
reading
out
that. That
there.
was so
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah, that just I don't know why. I mean, of course now we know a lot more about all kinds of health, mental health, physical health, and but back then there was just a lot of misnomers going around. And another thing that Nancy did specifically is she trained to fly all of the bombers so that the military could recognize that women could fly these planes. And so she was the first one to fly like the Flying Fortress and the P-51 Mustang and all of the bigger planes. And that way, she was able to get women training specifically on specific planes so that they could truly help and not just do smaller plane transportation.
Right. I loved how her husband was so supportive of her, from like the first second she met him, he was not very nice. And then as she got to know him, but what a supportive person. He just, supported her for every little thing she did, he supported, which was so nice.
Yeah, I think Bob Love, meeting his wife that way is kind of their family legend of how they definitely butted heads when they first met. And he learned to respect her, and she just had this ambition that no one could hold back. And I really think she probably would not have married him if he wasn't supportive in that way, because she had a really supportive father and brother as
Yeah,
well. And so
I
she
loved
kind
her
of
father.
yeah,
Yes, I
expected
loved
that from,
him.
yeah, he was definitely supportive. And her mother was a little bit more hesitant, not only
Mhm.
because she didn't think flying was very ladylike, but she was also probably worried about her daughter's safety and maybe trusting her daughter. Can you really learn how to fly these planes and not get injured or worse? And it was interesting though that Nancy, she wasn't like a really strong personality, but she definitely was very persistent and just kind of head to the nose to the grindstone, or whatever that saying is.
Mhm.
She just was very methodical, and she's very safety conscious. So she's very, when she did the pre-flight inspection, she sometimes did it more than once. And but she truly just loved flying and that feeling of being able to follow her dreams and follow her passion.
Yeah, she was amazing. Now, how did you know, like, reading the book, I mean, you had to like do a lot of research. I mean, you know, press this, press that, pull up, pull down, this. I mean, there was so much to the book, where you described every little thing. How did you learn all that?
So that was definitely a challenge, because there's only so much you can Google or even watching YouTube and take notes of the actual mechanics of flying a plane, especially since these are planes from the 30s and 40s. And so I have a daughter who's in pilot training, but she was flying on these small planes, to train. And so she was definitely
Like
helpful with
what,
me
like the
just with
Cessna
some of
or
the,
something?
yeah, some of
Uh-huh.
the language. And then I ended up reading a couple biographies that Sarah Bryn Rickman had written, and she's kind of the foremost scholar on the WASP, and she has a biography on Nancy Love. And so and in those she has some journal entries and letters written by the WASP that kind of describe their flying experience. So that was helpful too. And then I ended up going to Hill Air Force Base. I live in Utah, and it's pretty close to me. And I went to their museum, and I was literally just hoping and praying that I could meet someone, because they have a lot of Air Force vets there that are volunteers, and they answer questions about the different aircraft. And so I talked to a few of the gentlemen, and I met one that offered to read my flying scenes. And so I sent him, I think it was 8 or 9 scenes that I sent him, and he gave me some good feedback, because I was very nervous about that, like thinking if someone from the
Well,
military reads this, I don't want them throwing the book out because I hadn't done my research.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't have known it about you being nervous at all when you read the book. Everything sound. I'm like, I wonder if she went up in a plane and like was writing stuff down as the
Yeah.
pilot was doing stuff, and all that kind of good things. Because
That
you
would have
did.
been the next step, but that would have been definitely very nerve-wracking for me to do.
So you wouldn't go up in a small plane.
I probably would, but it would not have been my first choice if I felt like I had to. I mean, I'm fine with flying, but I've been in a couple of those small planes and I definitely get a little bit claustrophobic in them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, no, yeah, no. I call them like puddle jumpers.
Yeah.
It's like like with the propellers. No, that doesn't work.
Yep.
What made you like just decide to, write about Nancy and all that? Like what, you know, did you just wake up one day and say, I want to write about a woman pilot, or how did it all
Well,
start?
that didn't happen with this book, but sometimes that does happen with certain books. But I actually had a meeting with my publisher, and we were brainstorming kind of my next couple years of what that would look like. And one of the editors, she had an idea of maybe writing something. Most of my books have women as the main characters, and so she had an idea of writing about Amelia Earhart, and so we kind of bantered that around a little bit, and it ended up, well, what if we write about the women, a female aviator, and I didn't know. I mean, I had read books, a couple of historical novels with wasp as main characters, so I knew a little bit about
Yeah.
them. So they basically just said, we would like you to write about a female aviator that made a difference in aviation. And so I just kind of went to Google, and of course you find quite a few. And the challenge was narrowing them down to, okay, which one doesn't have maybe a book already written
Right.
or is kind of an unsung hero. And after a few weeks of just reading as much as I could, Nancy kind of rose to the top because she, after the WASP was disbanded in December 1944, she was very upset about it, and she burned her uniform. And she and her husband, he worked for an airline for a little bit, but she ended up having 3 daughters, and she kind of lived a quiet life after that. And I felt like she had done this huge service to women in aviation and future military, of course, when women were able to be militarized. But but she just never was. She was honored by different groups and different clubs, but she kind of just backed out and just sort of, she had done all these amazing things, but she just kind of went not into hiding, but just into her own family life, which is of course wonderful. But no one really, the rest of the world hadn't really heard about her as the years progressed.
Well, I'm sure everybody is so thankful that you did, bring her out so more and more people, know about her. I love reading about, like it would have been nice to read about Amelia Earhart, but we all kind of
Yeah,
did that, been there, done that,
yeah,
nothing against Amelia and everybody,
yeah.
but
And she
it
has a
was so
lot of
nice
books on
to,
her, which are wonderful too.
yeah, Nancy or Amelia?
Or Amelia does, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's why I was so happy. I'm happy that you did choose Nancy because, like you said, the unsung hero. Let's, we need to know more about those people that made such a huge impact, but nobody knew it unless somebody wrote about it, like you.
Yeah. Thank you so
Oh, you're
much.
welcome. Now, what was the deal with Cochran and Nancy, Jackie like, was that really true? Did they kind of have a little,
Yeah,
rift going between them?
um they definitely kind of had differing opinions. I mean, they had the same end goals,
Right.
but Jackie felt like she had gotten the short end of the stick because she was actually one of those pilots that was in England at the time, um, when Pearl Harbor happened, and she was already serving in that capacity, helping out with the Royal Air Force over there. And so things were just happening really fast. After Pearl Harbor happened, things happened really fast where Nancy was in conversations with people that could make decisions. And she had already been pushing for this for at least a year, and so had Jackie, but they had kind of different contacts in the military. And so Nancy got approved to run the squadron, And Jackie, as soon as she heard, kind of through the grapevine, she hurried back overseas, and she was pretty upset because she had been promised by her contact that if anything was going to happen, she would be able to jump in and lead this group. So Nancy's squadron was already underway, and so it ended up that Jackie would be over the official training, and then once she got them trained, then they would start joining and forming new squadrons. So I think there was kind of just disappointment on Jackie's part, feeling like the rug had been pulled out from under her, where in truth there is definitely enough work for both women to do. And Jackie, throughout the next couple years, she was also very focused on getting the women. So when this program first started, they were just considered civilian pilots because they didn't want women as part of the military, and which makes sense, especially at that time. But Jackie was really pushing the agenda to get them militarized, and it didn't happen until like the 1970s. But Jackie was one of those pilots that after the war ended, she continued flying. She continued doing everything she could to try to get the women recognized that way, and eventually happened, but it took a long time.
Yeah, that made me so angry that when it was if say one of the women pilots died, they fought, were there for their country, fought for their country, all that kind of stuff, but yet they couldn't even have the American flag, as part of the burial because they weren't,
Right.
part of the military, which meanwhile they were, and then some. But so that kind of made me a little angry, that it took them so long to recognize, it was such a shame.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, and it wasn't until, they didn't have any veteran benefits. So some of them did die in training because a lot of times they were flying planes that had mechanical problems. So then they'd fix the planes, and so the women would go up and fly them and make sure they're okay. And sometimes they weren't okay.
Right.
And there's always an accident here and there, but the women's record was actually a lot better than the male pilots because the women tended to be a little more careful, and they weren't hot dogging in the air as much. They just were more conservative, I guess. But some of the WASP died, and so they did have to pay for their own transportation and their own funerals, and like you said, they weren't given the military honors.
Yeah, I forgot about that with the burial. So yeah, they wouldn't pay for the burial. It's okay. I can die for the country, but yet you can't even pay for my own funeral.
Right. Yeah.
Something wrong there. Something definitely wrong.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Now, you've written, how many books have you written in total so far?
I've been writing for over 21 years now, and I have about 90 books published. Some are a little shorter. I write some sweet romance, and it's a little bit shorter. Books like Lady Flyer, my full historical novels, they're probably close to 400 pages each, so they're a little more intensive. So I kind of alternate of intensity versus more lighthearted stuff.
So it sounds like you kind of like to kind of flip-flop. So one is a little bit more less stressful, maybe?
Yeah.
Is that the right word?
Yeah, I would say that because I'm a full-time writer now, and when I started out, it was more of a hobby, but I would say like the last probably about almost over 10 years, I've been a full-time writer. And when I do historical, like Lady Flyer, it's a good 5 months of researching and writing, and it's just kind of all-consuming. And so when I'm done, it's like I want a breather, but then I want to keep writing. So then I look for something that's, maybe women's fiction or a romance or something that just kind of I'm not doing intensive research and is contemporary. So it's just a little more lighter write.
Yeah. Yes, I even as like a reader, like with my book club, say we read 2 historical fictions in a row. Okay, it's time for a lighter book, just to kind of mix it up a little bit, because
exactly,
especially if you're talking about war and things like that, sometimes you just want a fluffy, fun book, and happily ever after, and yada yada yada. So you're lucky that you can do that you do write more than one genre. That's nice.
Yeah, I've been very lucky, actually. So I have 2 publishers right now. I've had other publishers I've also written for. I wrote for Thomas and Mercer for several years. I did a thriller series with them. And then I've written for my original publisher. It's named Covenant, and they do mostly kind of either religious based, sometimes fiction or nonfiction. So I actually write biblical fiction for them.
Hmm.
And then the publisher that did Lady Flyer, they're called Shadow Mountain, and they do quite a few genres. They also do romance, but I'm just not one of the romance writers. So I do it kind of sounds a little strange, but I do historical women's fiction. So all the books have, except for one book, I would say I wrote a book called The Slow March of Light, where the main character is a man that ended up as a spy during the Cold War, and it's based on a true story. I was able to interview him. But most of my books are women centric as far as the main character.
Wow, it's amazing. It's like, what genre don't you write about?
I don't write horror. I've read horror. I haven't read horror for a long time, but I used to read it as a teenager, and but now it's too scary for me. So
Yeah, I like the thrillers though. I don't like. I like the mystery part of it, like the who
yeah.
done it, But I just can't believe I had no idea how many genres that you actually wrote. Now, did you always want to become a writer, or it just happened by accident? Tell us, how this journey all began.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've loved reading my whole life ever since I was a little kid. I'd go to the local library and I would check out 12 books. That was the limit. And I wouldn't always read them all, but in 2 weeks I'd go check out another 12 books. So I was just a big reader. And I remember when I was in high school, English was one of my favorite subjects. And I thought, well, maybe I'll major in English. Like I didn't really want to be a teacher. Both my parents are teachers, but I just thought, I don't know if I want to be a teacher. But English was easy for me. But I failed my AP English exam, so I decided that was a sign. So I did not major in English in college. I majored in fashion merchandising and business management. And so fast forward, I got married, I had a couple kids, and I was actually working retail because that was kind of what my major was.
Hmm.
And my grandma, who is 85, she said that she wanted to start working on her personal history and I could help her because she thought I was
Oh.
a good letter writer. So times when I had lived out of state from her, we'd written
Hmm.
letters. And so from that experience, I actually just kind of had a story idea. Um, she grew up, in the 30s and 40s, and she was a young married woman. And I had a story idea set right before World War II. And so I thought, I'll just write a short story and maybe submit to magazine. Back then, magazine published short novelettes. Anyway, it just kept getting longer and longer, and it turned into 300 pages. And of course, it was horrible and terrible. But I was like, what do I do with this? I didn't even know anything about publishing. And I found like a local group that was at a library they met once a month, and they were a group of writers and they had speakers come. So I ended up going there and I joined a critique group, and that's where I really learned to write, is going to critique group. And I went every week for several years, and eventually wrote a couple more books. And so my fourth book I wrote was the first book that actually got published. So it took some practice for me, but I was 30 when I started, so it's not too late to start for anybody out there.
Oh yeah, no. I've worked with authors that were 83 years old.
That's
It
amazing.
was
Yeah.
her second book. She did a book tour with me. Yep, it was her second book, and she's written stuff after that. After that.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
you're right. It's never too late. There's no age limit on being an author. That's the good thing.
Right.
I love that. That's a great story. And so, did your grandma like what you wrote in the end?
So she had been reading. I think she was about halfway through reading. Do you mean like what I was writing or what I wrote for her?
What you wrote for her? Like she wanted you to help her.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So she was funny because I would ask her questions, because we had like maybe a chapter on her childhood and chapter on different things. And she would tell me all these stories and I'd write them down and I'd bring them, like, I'd go up there once a week. And she would sometimes read it and say, well, I don't think I want to tell this story after all, because maybe she felt like it was too personal or too vulnerable. Um, but, and then anyway, and then we just printed like a little booklet, and this is, I mean, over 20 years ago. So we didn't
Mhm.
have all this online stuff going on. So
Yeah.
we went to a copy shop and printed like 30 copies and sent them to
Oh,
all the kids and
oh,
grandkids, that sort of thing. So
That's so, but at least she did finish it
yeah,
and she was happy and that's adorable.
yeah, it was
So what
fun.
is what's next on the horizon for you, Heather? What do you have up your sleeves now? Because obviously I know you do.
Yes. So I have a book coming out in September, and it's a historical novel on Julia Child, and it
Ooh.
covers her war years. So she actually served in the OSS during World War II, and she was transferred to Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka, and that's where she met her husband Paul, and then her husband ends up getting a job in Paris. He works for the government there, and so she goes to Paris for the first time, and she absolutely falls in love with French food. And this begins her journey of learning how to cook, and eventually having a cookbook come out, and then being invited to cook on television, and that's when the French chef started. So it's a historical novel. It's very lighthearted because Julia Child is a larger than life, very exuberant, fun personality to write about. So it's definitely a different book to write for me, but it was really fun too. So that comes out in September, um, and I'm currently working on. It's more of a nonfiction book. It's actually alternating between nonfiction and historical fiction, but it's about 8 different women who shaped America, some starting pre-revolution and working my way up into about the 1970s. And I've selected 8 women. So it's a little bit of a challenge because I've had to do a lot of research just to write
Oh,
one
yeah.
section or one woman. So I'm trying to like balance how much research to do, but also doing the story justice for each woman.
Right. Can we just go back to Julia Childs? What made you decide you would like to write a book about her? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So again, I was in a brainstorming meeting with my publisher, and one of the editors, this was a different editor, and she said, "Did you know Julia Child served in the war?" And I was like, "What?" Anyway, it wasn't quite like that, but as I started doing research, I realized what she actually did was really important and really helpful. Um, I think it's because I had written a book called Under the Java Moon, which is set in Indonesia during World War II, about a Dutch family that had been in an internment camp the whole time. And then I did Lady Flyer. And so basically I had done like 2 World War II era books, and then this kind of, but as we were kind of talking, I thought, well, I mean, I don't really, it's not really a war book because Julia, she was never in like kind of danger. She's in a very safe place. Ceylon was actually a very sheltered place for the war. They just did a lot of the undercover espionage connections.
Mhm.
And but as I was working on the book, I'm like, everyone that's going to come to this story, they're going to be so disappointed if I don't talk about how she became the French chef. And so I had talked to my publisher. I'm like, is it okay if this book literally it spans 20 years? So it has like a part 1 and a part 2, because there, and in the interim, there's been a book come out by I think it's Diana Chambers, called The Secret Life of Julia, or The Secret War of Julia Child.
Mhm.
And it came out in the fall, and it's a beautiful, I read part of it. I didn't have time to get through the whole thing. It's one of those books I'm like, I gotta get back to it. But she's a beautiful writer, but her story is just the war years. So now I'm grateful I decided to like go beyond the war years. So my book is
Right.
kind of part 1 is the war years, and part 2 is her becoming the French chef.
Yeah. It sounds really nice. I'm looking forward to it. Do you have
Well,
a
thank
title
you. I'm
for it
excited.
yet or no?
So, well,
But you're
I
not
have
allowed.
to, it's a long title. So we went back and forth for so long. So it's called Julia, and then the subtitle is Inspired by the Extraordinary Life of Julia Child. So the book is just called Julia, but then it has a subtitle. So people were like, oh, okay, I know what you're talking about.
Right. Very nice. Oh, so exciting. And you said that's coming out in September 2025,
Yes.
right? This year?
Yep.
Very
Year.
nice.
Well, we're out of time, Heather. I loved talking with you and hearing all about all your books. I mean, especially Lady Flyer. So anybody who's listening, I highly recommend reading Lady Flyer. 5-star all the way. You're going to fall in
Thank you
love with
so
the characters.
much.
Oh, you're welcome. I didn't post it yet, on Amazon, but I will. But I'm so thankful for you to come on the show. And I appreciate you, and I'm looking forward. I can't wait to interview for the Julia Childs book.
Thank you so much. I love to be back, and thanks for all you're doing and bringing more books to everyone's awareness. I appreciate talking to you. It's been fun.
Oh, thank you. Have a great day, Heather.
Okay, you too.
Bye.